Isagi is not a plot merchant, and him beating Hugo by dribbling past him actually makes perfect sense, and I'll be explaining why in this video. So starting off with how Isagi was able to beat Hugo, we have to understand a couple of things. The first thing we have to understand is exactly what took place earlier on. As Hugo tells us earlier on in the match that in order to stop Isagi's weapon, he needs direct contact. Direct contact that prevents Isagi from being able to use his backwards direct shot and his 2-gun volley. And this is exactly how Hugo is able to stop Isagi earlier on in the game. But this logic also explains how Isagi is able to beat him later on. As in the first exchange, we see that Hugo completely closes off the distance between him and Isagi, eliminating Isagi's options through just physical pressure. But in the moment that we're seeing right here in this latest chapter, we see that Hugo is unable to close the gap between him and Isagi fully. You can clearly see this right here, where the gap between Isagi and Hugo is considerably larger than the one in the previous play where Hugo was actually able to stop him entirely. This is what forces Hugo into the luck battle between him and Isagi, as instead of Hugo physically restricting Isagi's next movements, what Hugo has to do in this position is predict what Isagi will do next. Will Isagi go left or will Isagi go right? Now explaining this next part requires some level of football knowledge, but I'll break it down in a manner where somebody who has never played the sport can understand, and those who are watching this video who play football will understand exactly what I mean. When you are trying to beat a defender that is directly behind you, you have two simple choices, either to cut left or to cut right. For a right-footed player, the more natural movement is usually to cut across the body, to go left, because it ends up setting up your dominant foot, which is more comfortable for you to use. So for a left-footed player, the opposite would take place. And since Isagi is right-footed, the rational option for him would be to cut left and go using his dominant foot. This is what Hugo ends up predicting. And from Hugo's perspective, the reason why he chooses this option is because it is the safer option, the more natural option, and thus the most logical one. But instead, Isagi chooses the right side, the more difficult thing to pull off and the most imaginative route, in order for him to set up his lefty shots. And by doing so, Isagi wins this luck battle. So the question that people will now have and complain on is why exactly is Hugo accepting this situation in the first place? But the answer to this question is simple, and it lies within the philosophy and the characterization of Hugo. Throughout both Hugo's dialogue and his backstory, we learn that he genuinely believes that people should live according to their suitability. Even as a child, Hugo found pleasure in telling other people what kind of life they are suited for. And in Isagi's case, Hugo believes that he has already figured him out. Hugo thinks that Isagi is suited to be the secondary player, not the number one. But more importantly, Hugo wants Isagi to accept this role because it would create a stronger opponent for him to crush later on, just like Isagi did against Nigeria. So why does Hugo commit to predicting the left side that Isagi doesn't end up taking? There are actually two reasons. The first one is the one that we discussed, the fact that it is the rational decision to make. And Hugo's character is entirely built around this rational and logical side of thinking. But the second reason is the most important, and it is that Hugo had an understanding of Isagi throughout this entire game, and that is that Isagi's game is based off fear at this current moment because he has become the number one and he is not suited for that position. One of the main reasons why Isagi has struggled so badly in this game is because of the pressure of being number one. The pressure that Isagi was going through caused him to play in an increasingly predictable way. As Hugo says himself in this page, the pressure is causing you anxiety, making your plays easy to predict and crush. This is the core reason why Hugo believes that Isagi is not suited to be number one. So when Hugo sees the situation, he becomes even more convinced that in this specific luck battle, Isagi will choose the safe and predictable option by cutting left, because he believes that Isagi is not suited to be number 1, by him playing with this anxiety throughout the entire game, because he's not suited for that number 1 position. But this is exactly why Hugo ends up failing, because he misunderstands Isagi's truest suitability, while Isagi on the other hand, in this game, he finally comes to understand what his truest suitability is. And to understand what Isagi's truest suitability is, you have to watch this video right here, as I end up describing what Isagi's truest suitability is and how he comes to figure it out.